Hello and welcome to Adventurous Way. I'm Diana and behind the camera is Matt. A few videos ago we shared our newest adventure. We are looking to build a home base, which means we want to find a plot of land and build a house. So in this video we will walk you through the steps we're taking to start that search process. We have no family ties anywhere in the United States. So in some ways it makes it easier. We could live anywhere in the United States. On the other hand, it makes it harder because there's just so much more choice. So for now, one of the areas that we have narrowed down is New England. We love outdoors, and living in the RV really has shown us that we are very comfortable being in remote places and far away from the city. So we are looking for some rural areas, but there are still some amenities that we want to be nearby. So first, we want to be within a half an hour's drive of a town that will have a good grocery store, where we could find local, fresh, organic produce. We also want to be within about an hour's drive of a hardware store, and maybe about 2-3 hours from a big city that might have an airport and maybe a Costco. We have been in New England since fall, and we haven't explored all of it yet, but we have identified a few towns that might work for us as hubs, such as Littleton and Hanover in New Hampshire, or Montpelier and Middlebury in Vermont. It's a long process to buy land, but the first step is to find potential properties that might work for you. So in this video, I will share my 6 steps to find more information about each property to arrive at the list of properties to go and visit. So step 1 is to find some properties online, and there are many websites that you could do so. And there are actually websites that specialize in land properties. So one of them is landwatch.com. Then we also have landandfarm.com. And then we also have landsofamerica.com. And I also like using Zillow.com. Zillow has all sorts of real estate, but also including land. So now, as an example, let me show you how I start my search on Zillow.com. So first, I start at the state level. For now, let's say Vermont. And then the 2 criteria I do set is the maximum budget, and I set the minimum acreage. For now, we're looking at minimum acreage of 10 acres. And then we feel more land is better, so my sort by, I use lot size to sort by largest lots first. So these listings show the whole state, so we need to narrow it down somehow. For me, the second step is actually investigating the town zoning laws to make sure that it would allow things that we want to do. So one of the things I'm looking for is what are the rules around recreational vehicles, because we would like to live in our RV while we build a house and allow the possibility of friends visiting us for extended periods of time. So let me show you how I find the town zoning laws. As an example, I'll show you how to find zoning laws for town of Ripton, Vermont. So we're searching for Ripton zoning laws. For town of Ripton, they're called Unified Development by Law. And I'm searching for recreational vehicle. Sometimes I also search for campers. Okay, and here we see that no camper, tiny house, or recreational vehicle may be occupied for more than 16 days in any 1-year period without first receiving a temporary use permit from the zoning administrator. So this wouldn't really work if we want to have our friends visit for extended periods of time and stay in their RVs. Every town will have different zoning laws regarding the recreational vehicles. Let's check out another one. For example, Newbury, Vermont. For example, for Newbury, I cannot find any rule that would prohibit stays in recreational vehicles. So that's a town I don't need to rule out, and I can continue to look for properties. So after I have identified that the town works for us in terms of zoning laws for a particular property, then step 3 for me is to look at the parcel map of the property. Especially if the parcel shape is not included in the listing of the property. So to look for the parcel view, I need to find a parcel viewer. Some states, like Vermont, has parcel viewer for all the parcels in the whole state, but for example, New Hampshire doesn't have that. So for Vermont, to find that, I can look for Vermont parcel viewer, or you can also search for GIS. And here we have a parcel viewer. So here in this example listing, the address says 0 Wrights Mountain Road, Newbury. I will put that into the parcel viewer, but the 0, or it could be 100 or 200 or 999, it doesn't mean it's an actual real address for undeveloped property. Most usually it's not. So when I pull it up in the parcel viewer, it actually is not going to pull it up exactly. So what I'm going to do is to look for parcels that match the acreage in the property listing. So this is 78.59 acres. So looking at this one, this is 103 acres. This one is 15 acres. This one is 60 acres. And this one is 78 acres. Okay, look at that. That is our parcel. And here it actually looks quite an awkward shape because the road is here and it is quite far from the road. And actually the listing does say that. It says power is at the street, but maybe cost prohibitive to bring to the building site. And the parcel shape corroborates that. So for our particular purposes, we would skip on this property. So that's one thing we're looking for, to not be too far off the main road. We also are looking for plots that are not too thin, kind of long, thin shaped plots, a little bit harder to deal with. So we're looking for kind of roughly, maybe at minimum 300 feet wide plots. So for example, in this particular GIS viewer for Vermont, there are measurement tools and you can measure how wide something is. So for example, here to here is 440 feet. So that probably would be doable. Okay, so now let me show you another example. So here, address is Chalmers, Newbury. Enter that into the address bar. And this was 47 acres. So this one is 55, this one's 78, 56, 55.8. This one doesn't show how much. So nothing really matches the 47 acres. A lot of these listings are listed in multiple sites. So sometimes what I do, I find the MLS ID that's on Zillow, and then I search for that ID in Google to find other listing sites and see whether they have more information. So for example, here it is on Masilo.com, and actually find that Masilo.com sometimes has better kind of location pin for where the property is. So this one has a map, but I mean, there's nothing near Chandler's Road. So actually I found that Zillow sometimes doesn't have accurate pin location. So here I'm looking at map listing. And here it actually shows the property right at the end of the Chalmers Hill Road. So back to the parcel viewer. So actually this probably is a lot, even though it doesn't say the acreage, but this is probably a lot. So here we can see that it's next to the highway, and we would not want to be that close to the highway. So this parcel is also out. So there are a lot of things that I can learn by looking at the parcel shape in the parcel viewer if it's not already listed in the listing. So let's look at the third example. So this is Halls Road, also Newbury. And we click around until we find acreage that matches. So it's this one, 11.2 acres. So, you know, it is a little bit narrow and long, but it's just about 300 feet, so it's probably doable. So after I figure out that my plot looks fine in the parcel viewer, step 4 is to figure out the zoning of the property. The listing doesn't say what zoning it is. Sometimes I use the MLS ID to see whether other websites say what the zoning is. In this particular example, it didn't. So here's another way how to find that. You can look for the zoning map of the town. Okay, here we go. So this is Newbury zoning map, and we are near Halls Lake. And from the parcel viewer, this is about 1 2/3 kind of long plot down. So that would be 1 2 3, this plot here. So here we can see it's white and green, and from the legend we can see it's RR1, which means rural residential, and CD10. So now let's go back to the zoning laws of the town. So here we can look up what that CD10 means, and that's conservation district. So after you have figured out what is the zoning category of your property, then you can look in the zoning laws whether there is anything that might be a problem for you. So for example, here it lists what are the different things that are allowed. For example, accessory dwellings, 1 and 2 unit dwellings are allowed, and so on. Sometimes we look at what is the minimum acreage, what is, for example, minimum lot frontage. So that could impact, for example, whether in the future that lot is divisible or not. If the lot frontage is too short and just about the minimum size, then you probably won't be able to split it in two if that's something that you care about. Step 5 is I look for the road access. Sometimes you can see it in Google Maps whether there is a street view or not. Sometimes that's not possible, and the street view just doesn't exist for the smaller roads. Sometimes on the parcel viewer you can see how big the roads are. If not, you can also look at the town zoning map. A lot of times it will include the road types. So for example, this road here looks like is town highway class 3 gravel, which is fine. Looks like generally the class 4 is, it may not be maintained, especially not in winter. Class 3 and up is mostly maintained and probably plowed in winter, but is not always the case. So ideally we would want to be at a property where the road is maintained for the winter. Next, step 6 for us is to look at the flood maps. One of the kind of criteria for us to live in an area where natural disasters are not as common, and New England fits the bill for that. However, there are still flood zones. So we would prefer not to live in the flood zone. Especially would want to live outside of a, I think, 100-year or 500-year flood zone, because that means, hey, less chance of flood, but also if you live in a flood zone, you have to pay flood insurance. And there are maps online where you can find that out. So let's continue with our example property and look up whether it's in the flood zone. In the famous National Flood Hazard Layer map, we'll put in the address. Okay, here we go. This is the Halls Lake. And the property is somewhere around here. And we can see that the creek that runs through the property is in zone A. And here this zone X means there's no flooding there. So this kind of depends on the property. If the creek that may flood is kind of on the back of the property, it doesn't really matter that much. But if it's a smaller property and the kind of creek goes through the middle, that bisect the property in half of kind of what could be usable. So in this particular case, since it's a small property, we probably would pass. Another place that you can look for is the wetland map. So this is a national wetlands inventory, and here too we can enter an address. And here's the lake and the creek. The property is somewhere around here. So yeah, in this particular case, the wetlands is maybe not such a big deal, but there can be properties where the front half of the property is a wetland. And wetland is a problem because you can't build on it, and you have to be certain distance away from wetlands to be able to build. So here you have it. These are the 6 steps I take to look up more information about properties online. Once I've found one property that I would like to visit, then I will look for more properties in the same town, because now I know the zoning laws are agreeable. Then I'll look in nearby towns, check the zoning laws for those, and I'll look for properties in the same county. Once I've arrived at 5 properties, then we can go on a trip and investigate them. The very first trip out is actually more about seeing whether we like the neighborhood, whether we like the area. We also might stop by the grocery store, see how we like that. And then actually visiting the properties is to see how the reality matches of what we research online. But that we'll show you in another video. So thanks for watching, and if you would like to follow our journey of finding land and building a house, please hit that subscribe button. Look out for there aren't really hurricanes or earthquakes or tornadoes.
Earthquakes.
Earthquakes.
Not earthquakes. That tastes really nice.